Hi, everybody. Welcome to We Can't Do This Alone. I'm your host, Erin Stitzel, and today's actually really personal for me. So I have been so blessed over my 20-year career to have many individuals, many people who have come into my life right at the right time that have offered guidance, advice, support, mentorship, and folks that have just had such a huge influence on me. And one of the coolest things about starting a podcast is that I can share some of these individuals with you all. And so that's what we're going to do today. I have got Brenda Steer-Anstine with me. She has a boatload of accolades and accomplishments that I'll let her share with you all. But it's so personal for me because she is one of my best mentors. She gave me literally one of the best pieces of advice that I've ever received in my career that really transformed the way that I went about my career and went about my professional life. So we're going to get into all of that. But I am just so excited to share her with you all. And it just really also brings me back full circle to be able to bring her on to talk about some of these things because I first met Brenda when I was very young, early in my career. So Brenda, welcome to We Can't Do This Alone. We are so happy you're here. Hi.
Erin, thank you so much. It's so heartwarming to see you doing what you're doing. I mean, I just want to be out there going, "Yay, Erin!" As I can't believe it's been 20 years, but
Yes.
yes, you and your career have inspired so many younger folks, and those of us who have watched you, it's been an inspiration. So I'm really proud of you and everything you're doing.
Well, thank you. Thank you for that. It's been a journey and like I said, so many folks have really helped pave the way for me. So Brenda, first and foremost, tell us about you. You've done so many things. You're retired now, but you did so many things over your career and your journey, and I think our audience would love to hear that. Just if you could just start from the beginning if you want. Tell us about you and just all in your career, marketing and so forth. Well, I'll let you explain it. So
Sure.
tell us
I,
about you if you wouldn't mind.
I don't know if it's all that exciting, but here's the journey. Right out of school, I had a radio and television degree, moved very quickly into PR. It's a very natural flipping sides of the camera. And my very first job was at a PR firm in Columbus, Ohio. I was there for about 8 months and I came to work one Monday morning. The doors were locked and they were out of business. So there was no warning, just done. So after a good, long, hard cry, a couple good, long,
Yeah,
hard cries, um,
I'm sure.
I didn't know what to do. And I was in the middle of projects with several clients. So I simply called those clients really out of obligation to them and said, I got nothing else to do. Can I finish this project for you? And several of them said yes. I started to do that work to finish those projects. And my mindset at the time was, well, I'll get these guys all buttoned up while I'm out there looking for a new job. And I never found a job. I continued to do projects for these clients. And suddenly I found myself in business. I was 22 years old. I had 8 months of experience. I didn't know anything about anything. I just knew that I needed to take care of these clients. And, Erin, that was the beginning of an amazing career. And I don't mean amazing because of what I did, but just the opportunity that it brought me. My personality is not one, I know I never would have set out to put together a business plan and start a business and be an entrepreneur. That just wasn't
Sure.
where my head was, at least then. And it turned out, as many things do, to be the absolute best thing it possibly could have been. So because I was a business owner at 22 years old, I quite frankly, had to fake it along the way.
Yes.
I had to learn the hard way. I had to learn from other people, which is probably why I became so passionate about always needing more advice, always needing more direction, always trying to surround myself with people that I knew were smarter than me, had more experience than me, could share some of their wisdom with me. And that led to so many opportunities. I ended up teaching for 9 years at Franklin University. That was through one of my mentors that opportunity happened. I ended up serving on countless boards, both for profit and nonprofit. And those people really embraced me and taught me and brought me along. So it just gave me opportunity after opportunity to do so many things and learn a lot of new stuff.
Absolutely. Well, that's how we met because you were a board member
Correct.
for us at Mount
Yep.
Carmel, which I've told this audience. Obviously, I've said a couple of times, I spent 12 years at Mount Carmel Health System here in Columbus, Ohio, in philanthropy, doing almost every role you could do in philanthropy for a hospital foundation. And Brenda, I think, because I started at Mount Carmel in 2004, I think you joined the board either in 2004 or right after that. Or do you remember what year?
I don't remember the exact year, but I remember you came on as an intern. Isn't that
Yep, I
correct?
was an intern. I
Yeah.
was.
Yeah.
Okay, you have a good memory. I mean, I remember that, but I'm surprised you remember that.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So you were there. Absolutely. Yeah. So yeah, I came on as an intern. So I was a baby. I was 22. Kudos to you for starting a business at 22. I was just getting a job, putting my foot in the door. And I do remember you helping us through rebranding
Yes.
at Mount Carmel through our foundation, that whole rebranding project. So that was pretty cool. We were working at Mount Carmel West back then. So that was in
That's
the
right.
olden
That's
days.
right. And Erin, what I remember about you, and it's funny, I guess I didn't put together that you were 22 at the time when you came as in as an
Yes.
intern. You reminded me so much of me because, you were beautiful and you were
Oh,
smart
gosh.
and you had no experience, but
Yes.
you didn't let that stop you. And
Right.
I remember there was one meeting in particular. You came in and, you had a beautiful suit on and you were, dressed appropriately. And I thought, huh, I know exactly what she's thinking and exactly what she's up against.
Well, you eventually started helping me with some of those things. But I do, speaking of advice, I will always remember. So when I was in college, my mom took me shopping for a suit to go interview in. And she said, Erin, this is not going to be flashy. You're not going to love this. Like, we got navy pumps, like the dorkiest shoes I've ever seen in my life. We were at Macy's. I love Macy's. I don't mean to dog Macy's, but she said, you're just going to have to deal with this and wear this suit. And I remember, Brenda, I don't know if you probably don't remember this, at a board meeting at Mount Carmel. Obviously, we're in healthcare. So, healthcare, we start early
Correct?
and it's early in the morning. And I showed up, and one of our board members at the time, her husband was our CFO. And this is a longtime family friend of ours. My dad and her husband worked together since they were 25 years old. So, we are friends. And she came up and she tapped me. She said, Erin, you have on black pants with your navy suit jacket. And I was mortified, obviously. I think it was dark in my closet in my apartment, my 22-year-old apartment. And it was early in the morning. And, you're 22, you're not used to getting up that early. And so, it's those things. So it probably wasn't that board meeting that you remember because I was not looking very cute that day. So,
Well, it's so funny you talk about how we dress, back in those days, it was suit, pantyhose,
yeah.
heels, all of the stuff. And, as a business owner and as I got on more and more boards, one of the boards that I was so grateful to be a part of, I chaired the small business counsel for the Columbus Chamber of Commerce. Because I was the chair, it put me on the chamber board and the executive board.
Gosh.
So it's my first executive board meeting of the Columbus Chamber of Commerce, and a 7 a.m. breakfast meeting, as they all are. And I remember putting on a pink fuchsia silk suit. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
thinking, okay, I'm going to this meeting, and I get downtown. And now remember, on at least at that time, that executive committee consisted of who I refer to as the titans of Columbus. I mean, they were the CEOs of the
Oh,
Fortune
yeah.
500 companies, and mostly older men. And it was being held at the Columbus Club, which did have a reputation for being a men's only club at one
Sure.
point in time,
Oh,
but
absolutely.
they started letting women in. So I march in and I open the door, and there's, dark suit, blue tie, dark suit, red tie, dark suit, blue tie, dark suit, red tie. And I'm in my pink fuchsia suit, and I thought, you have made the wrong decision here.
No.
And I was very quiet that first meeting, and I just got a comfort level. Thankfully, every one of the people on that executive committee just embraced me. They probably thought, oh, this poor young thing needs our help. And I got very comfortable showing up, whether it was in my pink fuchsia suit or my whatever color suit. And I started contributing, and I started offering ideas. And I remember one idea, I really spoke up on a very significant issue. And again, I felt like the whole room went, who is she and why is
Yeah.
she saying this? And afterward, one of the big CEOs from one of the major corporations pulled me aside, and he said, I don't know if because you have no fear, or you are new to this scene. He said, but I admire that you spoke up and made that suggestion. And that, I think that's all it took. It kind of
Yeah.
took that fear away from me, and that self doubt of,
Yes.
oh, I got the wrong color suit on. Your suit doesn't matter. And it doesn't matter if you had black pants and a blue jacket or vice versa. You know, they
Absolutely.
you're there to contribute, and we wanted you for your talent, and look at you now. I mean, we were dead on.
Well, thank you. Well, I mean, I could go on for another day about this issue around, I'm a, healthcare philanthropy, traditionally been very male dominated. I've got pink on right now, as you can see. We call it power pink. We love the power pink. And you're so right. It doesn't matter what we wear, but it can be intimidating. But I will say, too, a lot, even I remember it was 2019. I spoke on a panel at our AHP conference in Association for Healthcare Philanthropy. They had started a 40 under 40 award, and I was in the inaugural class. And so the next year at next year's conference, they had four of us do a panel, like what we've learned about 40 under 40. And myself and the other woman on the panel purposely didn't wear a suit. I think she had on a leather jacket. That was when leather leggings were really in style. And we purposely did that to show up wearing what we wanted to wear, to show that you can still be professional, executive level, and have that influence, and still you don't just have to be in a black suit.
Mhm.
So,
Yep.
and speaking of advice too, which everybody remember this, especially if you're young, I will never forget. I cannot remember who told this to me. I think I remember who, but I'm not 100%. But somebody very wise told me very young, nobody will ever remember if you're overdressed. Everybody will remember if you're underdressed. And that has stuck with me. And as you mentioned, Brenda, I mean, obviously, 20 years, even when I started at Mount Carmel, you could not go on a hospital floor in a skirt without pantyhose on, without nylons, they called it. And nurses, they would have to wear the skirt with the nylons. And obviously things have come a long way, but even I've had interns in the past who, showed up to a board meeting with shorts on, and it's just, and then you remember that forever. And so, I very much, even at my boss's house in Florida, we're pretty casual. I think it took me 7 years to show up there in flip flops. And now I don't care, but it's so true. So yeah, what
We
you wear.
have at Marketing Works, the company that I owned for a lot of years and still am a huge fan of, and I still mentor the current owner. We had an internship program, and it always surprised me. I knew right away. I through the years, I didn't necessarily interview all the intern candidates, but I
Sure.
always wanted to meet whoever they were going to bring on. And you knew right away by how they dressed, the questions they asked, how they responded to my questions, their level of, and I'll call it business maturity. And it was shocking the numbers of folks that showed up twice. Somebody showed up with their pet to the interview.
Oh, oh,
I had no words for that.
that's a new one, Brenda.
Yeah.
I've not heard that. Shorts, I thought was my worst example.
Twice.
Pets. Okay.
Said, okay. Well,
As a
needless
new
to say,
dog
they did
owner, I
not
love
get
my
that internship.
Yeah. I mean, I love my new puppy. I would not bring him to work ever, even though he's really cute. So, oh, okay. Well, I think, I'm just going to jump into the advice that you gave me because it stuck with me. And, your example talking about being at the Business Chamber of Commerce executive meeting as a young person, probably that experience really shaped the advice that you gave me. And so I can't even remember. And I do want to talk about too your experience as a board member because that's how I knew you. You chaired a campaign. We did. Obviously, this is a philanthropy podcast. So I do want to talk about that. But let's get into this piece of advice first because obviously, so you were on our board at Mount Carmel and, we're in leadership roles and my role started increasing, doing more for the foundation. And I think that's just how we naturally spent more time together. I probably reached out to you to connect. I think we started meeting maybe quarterly for lunch or so forth. I can't remember all the details, but you gave me the best piece of advice, honestly, I probably ever heard. And it was always be the youngest person in the room. This ensures that you are always continuously learning. So tell me about, do you remember that piece of advice? Let's talk about that for a second and then I can get
I
in.
remember the exact conversation, and I do remember
Okay.
sharing that with you. And I know for certain it's because of my own experience. So,
Yes.
being a business owner at 22, who's going to take you seriously anyway? And, that led to, well, I have to market the company, so I need to be out in the community. And that led to, well, to being out in the community and serving the community, you go on boards. And my personality is such that if I go on a board, I'm probably going to take a leadership position. But in every scenario, I was often by far the youngest person in the room uh, because I started so early. And again, I fully admit I knew nothing about nothing. And it's because I put myself and surrounded myself with these people who knew so much that, it's kind of similar to that advice of, pick your friends wisely because you kind of morph into what and who they are. It's the same thing professionally. I was hanging out, so to speak, with very well known, very experienced, very highly regarded people on boards within the community as clients. And it gave me a level of authority and respect that, quite frankly, I probably wouldn't have gotten had I not been in those circles. And every single board I was on, I learned so much as I moved up the ranks to leadership on the board or whatever the case was. And it was because of the people that drew me in as the young person. And so when I saw that in you, I thought, Erin, do the same thing and you'll never regret it, because you're constantly in a classroom, no matter if it's a meeting
Right.
or a campaign or a board development event or a weekend leadership retreat. You are being taught every step of the way, and it's so valuable. And I'm so happy you not only remember that advice, but you embraced it.
Absolutely. Well, and I think the biggest example of embracing it was through, when I decided to leave Mount Carmel and join Accordant. Accordant was a 1-year-old company. We had 3 people. I was consultant number 3, and I was the youngest person. And, many of my colleagues at Accordant had been chief development officers. I was a major gift officer at the time. I was young. I was 33 years old. And I was nervous. You talked about faking it. At the time, when you were faking it, you didn't have Amy Cuddy's book, Presence. Have you read Amy Cuddy's
I have
book?
not. No.
She's a Harvard professor. It's all about imposter syndrome, where, and, she gives like this whole exercise where you would hold up your arms kind of in a power move before you walk into a situation that you're nervous about, to just get your mindset right. It's all about that. So, to our listeners, Amy Cuddy's book Presence is a great one if you're young and looking to build some self-confidence. But, obviously I was very nervous, but I remember that advice, always be the youngest person in the room. And even before I joined Accordant, Mount Carmel St. Anne's, for example, where I spent the last 6 years of my career, I had gone up there as a development officer, the first development officer at Mount Carmel to really set up shop at a hospital, work with the C-suite leaders. And I was invited to join that C-suite administrative team. I was definitely the youngest person there, and it was nerve-wracking, but that's where I learned how to run a hospital. Learned so much about hospital operations. We did the campaign. We'll talk about more of that in a second. But so yes, that advice on 2 prongs for me was so impactful. A, to not scare me for being the youngest person in the room. And I'm not the youngest person in any room anymore. But I was for a while, which was fun. And 2, that advice helped me through that, but also the continuous learning piece. That is so important. I mean, I joked, even Brenda, when we reconnected, even starting this podcast, good grief, the joy of learning through this experience. I joked the first time I came down here to record, I think like 3 hours later, I went up and told my husband, well, that was fun. That was a big learning experience. And he starts chuckling, just seeing me go through the learning experience of doing something completely new. It's a different way, seeing yourself on camera, speaking. It's very different from speaking on a stage. And so this is a huge learning experience, but I'm having a ball with it. So just the continuous learning, I think, is so important. I embrace it, and I think I try to help others embrace that as well, because it keeps things interesting, and you can always learn more. So,
And you never know, what skill or what connection it can lead you so many places. And yeah, I applaud you for embracing it. And, I'm now retired and I continue to look for ways that I can. Uh, Unfortunately, I can't be the youngest person in the room anymore, but I can look for people who know a lot more than me about a lot of topics. And I love that.
absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, and I thought of one more example even before. So I think I was 26 at the time, and I was involved in a leadership program for Trinity Health, which is Mount Carmel's parent company. It was called Foundations in Leadership, where colleagues from all across the system, you did a 9-month training program around leadership, and you would go once a month. We were a cohort, similar to if you've ever done like a Leadership Columbus or Leadership Kentucky type of program, and you have a mentor and a project. At the time, our executive director of our foundation decided to retire. She would have been my mentor, but she was retiring. So we had to find me somebody new. And it ended up being our senior vice president of strategy and system development for the whole system. So he, out of the whole cohort, he was the most senior level mentor, and I was the youngest person in the cohort. And that was scary. I would have to go up to his office on the C-suite floor, like not the hospital. We're talking system leadership, and meet with him. And it was great. I mean, mind over matter. You do it, and you just jump in and you do it. And that actually launched my passion for Grateful Patient fundraising, because that was my project, and that actually basically started my whole career in Grateful Patient philanthropy. So look at that, Brenda.
Yep.
That piece of advice helped me through that situation as well. So, well, and let's talk for a minute about you as a board member, as a leader, because I know for me, seeing you as a leader, and I don't even remember when you weren't our board chair. You were our board chair for many years, as well as the big campaign that we did at Mount Carmel St. Anne's together to raise money for the Heart Tower for project. We called it Project Grace at the time, and you are our campaign chair as well. Talk about, for instances of this podcast, we can't do this alone. The premise of why I wanted to launch this was to bring on allies like board members, doctors, nurses, hospital presidents, you name it, to help folks like me as a philanthropy professional work better with our allies. You as a board chair and our campaign lead were amongst our best allies. Can you talk at all about just experiences from your point of view being a board chair or a board member, and what, name some good experience you had working with philanthropy team members in general? How best to work with a board chair, someone like you, to really ensure they're maximizing your talents and the things that you have to offer, and just to also make it a good experience for you.
Well, you know, I became very passionate about effective boards, being an effective board member and making sure that your board is being effective for you. I did a lot of development work through marketing works in that respect. I also just became very passionate anytime I was on a board talking about there would be the lame duck board members and what do you do about them?
Yep.
And there would be the folks that probably didn't, they were there to build their resume. Um, there's kind of two sides that I'd like to talk about, if that's okay. The
Absolutely.
first is selfishly, how do you find or become a really good board member? And I think, first of all, it has to stem from your passion and your desire to help that organization move forward. If you're doing it because it will look good on your resume, if you're doing it because your boss appointed you to do it, if you're doing it because you think it'll be good networking to help you make some sales, I really want to push back at you and say you need to rethink your why you're doing it, because you're going to hate it and you're not going to be a good, effective board member. Um, so that's kind of my first approach to how to make sure that you have a good board experience. Make sure
Yeah.
it's something that you're effective or passionate about. Second, I think it's really important that you have a very clear understanding of the expectations, because you're going to need to give your time. You're going to need to give time outside of meetings. I think oftentimes they say, oh, yeah, one meeting a month or one meeting a quarter. I can do that. Well, there's homework, there's reading material, there's introductions and networking that needs to take place. So make sure you understand what is really expected of you as a board member. Otherwise, you're setting yourself up to fail. And I think the last piece of advice is, make sure you enjoy the people you're sitting around that table with. I have been on a lot of boards. Most of them were just amazing, fun, incredible growing experiences. A couple of times I sat there and thought, wow, I can't, I hope this term is up sooner than later. And, you're going to spend a lot of time with these like minded people, hopefully. Make sure you're having fun with them. They don't have to be your best buddies, but make sure you respect them. Make sure that they are the kind of people that you want to spend time with. So that's my first kind of bucket of advice is how to make a board experience good for you. Now, from the other side of whether you're a nonprofit or a hospital or for profit, I have been on government I was on a governor appointed statewide board
Okay.
before. What makes a board effective is putting programs and structures in place that give every board member a roadmap for their own success, just like you do for an employee. I always tried to tell folks, you know what? You need to review your board members annually. You need to, just like you would an employee, you need to talk about how many meetings have you missed? Why are you missing those meetings? You need to talk about what they want to do next on the board. What is their career path, so to speak, on that board? Board development is so, so, so important. Also, diversity within a board. The last thing you want is a bunch of yes men for the CEO. You need
Yeah.
people who are not afraid to challenge, who also bring expertise that your organization might be missing. So, I would encourage organizations to put together a spreadsheet of expertise, levels of experience, diversity. Diversity is huge. Resources that folks could bring into it, and make sure that you are filling those gaps across the board. I think one thing that nonprofits do to a fault is they'll say, oh, I'll bet they're able to make a nice big contribution. We'll make them a board member and make sure they can do that. That is the last thing you should be expecting of your board person. Sure, if they're passionate about it and they're going to make a donation, absolutely. But if that's why you're bringing them on the board, you've got the wrong set of criteria in place.
Absolutely.
So, oh, can you tell? I just want to get around people and say, treat your board development with the same amount of enthusiasm and specific criteria that you do your employees and your career pathing, because it will pay off in the long run.
Speaking of always learn, I've literally never thought about it like that. Treating, like employee development. I love that. And I mean, I'm not like we have others on the Accordant team who are our board expertise, including my boss, Betsy Chapin Taylor. But that's amazing advice. I love that.
Well, as a board chair on a lot of boards, I would suggest let's do an annual review of our board members. And often the CEO would look at me or the executive director and think, oh, you never want to make your board members angry. And of course you don't. That's not the point. But to sit down with them and have an annual review to really help them and make sure that they're being effective. Nobody wants to be considered the lame duck on a board.
Right.
And if they are, making a very gentle transition path for them is probably also very welcome. So embrace it. Review your board members, give them high expectations, and let them succeed, and that will pay off.
Well, and I love what you said about the donation. So this podcast, we can't do this alone. It's going to be a lot of doctors. I had said in my intro episode, I love working with doctors, but I so thought, Brenda, because so many times, so in hospitals, we want our physicians as allies because when the doctor's involved, if they introduce us to a patient or come to the meeting or thank the donor, it's exponential, that influence. But so many times, an organization will say, oh, that physician's on our board or they're a big donor. So they should be our champion. And sometimes they're great champions, but no, we can't start there. I don't care if you're what physicians are giving, because philanthropy's time, talent, and treasure. It's not just about money. Time, and to board members, you're giving your time and your talent. And so that sometimes is so much more impactful than somebody making a participatory gift. Just like you said, obviously, you've got to have some passion for the organization when you join the board. It's probably going to grow. So over time, you're probably going to want to make a gift anyway.
Sure. And we need great donors. We need donors
Yes.
who are passionate in their donations. That does not translate to a good board member.
Right. I love that. Excellent advice. So I'm going to stop there because we can't even say that better. Let's get back to mentorship before we wrap up. Brenda, I know that you're still mentoring folks. I know I had not talked to you in a few years, but again, we still, you know, pass Christmas cards along and stay in touch a little bit. But you had mentioned a story how you're still mentoring the gentleman who purchased Marketing Works when you retire. So talk about that. I find that so fascinating. And to share, I consider you a mentor extraordinaire. So if you wouldn't mind sharing with us advice on how to be a good mentor. And then two, on the flip side, then I'm going to ask too, what is your advice for a young person who is seeking a good mentor? What should they do to find a mentor or to be a good mentee?
Well, again, thank you for letting me talk about this because I just love this topic.
Yes.
So I'll start with Marketing Works. So when I made the decision to sell the company, it was a years long process of finding the right fit and finding the right person. And I was so fortunate. I think God just said, "Here's the man." And a gentleman by the name of Bill Keyfaber purchased the company. And part of the deal was that I would mentor him for we didn't specify a certain period of time. We put some parameters around it, and it's funny, I am pretty certain I would not have sold without having that kind of a relationship because that was my baby, and I needed to make sure that the company was successful, my employees were taken care of. So that was not a hard sale for me to say, "Sure, I'll mentor you." Well, Erin, that was 8 years ago. And every Monday at 4 o'clock to this day, I still have a 1 hour weekly mentoring call with Bill, and our agenda is set. We talk about, company issues, employee issues, personal issues, navigating family with owning a business. We talk about all the stuff. And it's been such an honor to watch Bill, take the company to a place that I never did, and to be a part of that journey. So, and I joke with him all the time. I think I have these weekly calls more for me than for him because I'm so fulfilled, and it gives me an opportunity to see, wow, this is where this company is going. And I still have, interestingly enough, two employees who have been there 27 years. So one of whom I hired as an intern, and she just
Oh,
had
I
her
love that.
27-year anniversary.
Wow.
So, I care deeply about them and making sure that the company is doing well and Bill is doing well was really important to me. So
Yes.
I keep telling him he'll never be rid of me. We'll see someday.
Hopefully not.
I think I feel so strongly about mentoring because I had such great mentors. When I started, again, I'm going to reiterate, I knew nothing about nothing. And I had two very well respected, seasoned gentlemen that mentored me and took me under their wings. Both of them owned very large, successful marketing and advertising companies in Central Ohio. And, they just, I think they got a kick out of me, quite frankly, because I'd bop in, with the pink
In your
fuchsia
fuchsia.
suit saying, I don't know how to handle this client. And they gave me confidence more than anything. And that is such a valuable asset that nobody can take that away. So I really encourage folks to not only consider mentoring others, but especially if you are young in your career, look for mentors who will help carry you along. They will make introductions for you. They will get business for you. They will tell you, a good mentor will tell you when you're screwing up. And, sometimes we need to hear that more than anything because we don't know any better or any different. And you mentioned, how do you go about finding a good mentor? Because I've also watched, when I taught at Franklin University, we at Marketing Works had an internship program that I would recruit a lot of students to then come on as an intern. And th- they would go out and look for mentors. And you knew right away when it wasn't going to be a fit,
Sure.
because I think sometimes folks think being a good mentor means you got to tell them what to do and you got to steer them in the right direction. And quite frankly, part of being a good mentor, in my opinion, is letting people go out and make their own mistakes, but learn from those mistakes. And how can you take that experience and make it better next time? So be careful of the folks that are really out there just to tell you what to do, because you're not really learning from that at all. Learning means you're exploring, you're bouncing ideas, you're trying and you're failing, and then somebody is there to help you navigate what to do next.
I love that. Well, and then lastly, what is your advice for a young person who is seeking a good mentor? How can they ensure that they're a good mentee? I guess. What should they do and not do?
Here's what they should not do. Do not expect your mentor, one, to solve your problems for you, because that's really not what they're there to do.
Right.
Do not expect them to make you successful. And I think that's a really common misconception. A good mentor will help you fail. A good mentor will help
Sure.
you explore avenues that you've never explored before. And, we all define success so differently. There's one very specific incident that I had. Again, it was a Columbus Chamber connection. I was the little entrepreneur with a small organization, big CEO of a huge Fortune 500 company. I was so proud of the fact that I had just purchased our first building, and I invited him to come over to tour the building. Now, touring it meant, here we are, there's my office and there's their office and there's that office, and okay, that's the tour. And we came in and he sat down and he said, okay, how much do you want to grow this thing? You want to get it to, 10 million, 15 million. And he just, he was like, phew. And I just started laughing. And I said, oh, no, that's not for me. I was a single mom. I had 2 young kids at home. I was teaching night classes. This was a lifestyle business that gave me flexibility, helped me pay the bills, and helped me have a career that I could be really involved in the community, which was important to me. And to his credit, I thanked him. He shook hands. He left. And he called me 5 minutes after he left. And I got on the phone and he said, Brenda, I need to apologize to you. He said, I realized that I was just infusing on you my diagram of success. And for me and my organization, it's all about massive growth and, how do you build and how do you grow? And he said, I am so proud of you because it's so clear that that's not what you want. And you
Right.
very graciously told me that's not for me. I think that's huge. As both a mentor and a mentee, your definition of success has to be firmly planted in your soul. And you've got to be willing to say, "Mm, That's not for me. This is what I'm willing to do.
Look at that advice. The advice just keeps continuing. I love it.
I told you
Love
I
it.
could chat
Love
with
it.
you all day long.
I know. We could go on for you have to come on again. We're gonna have to unpack some of these other things that we are talking about. But for today's purposes, lastly, before we hop off, I do want to ask you about your daughter Megan. So Brenda and I have not talked in a few years, so I'm asking her about her kids and asked about Megan. Brenda's daughter, who is an actress in New York. And you got to tell us about Megan because talk about inspiration. So tell us about Megan, Brenda.
Well, talk about a topic I can go on and on about. I will try to
Yes.
be as brief as I can. So, at a very young age, at 9 years old, Megan came to me and said, I want to act, I want to sing, and I want to be in pageants. And I said, absolutely not. That scared me, you know. Mm, well, if anybody knows my daughter, she's very persistent. One thing led to another. She started in pageants, she started singing and acting. And I thought, she kept saying, I'm going to be in New York City one day. And again, as the scared mom, I said, oh, no, you're not. Well, through pageants and through acting and singing, she started winning awards and then national awards and national talent awards. And sure enough, she goes off to New York. She goes to a school there for musical theater. She becomes a professional actress. Struggling
Yeah,
actress, paying her
that's all right.
bills, paying her dues.
Yeah.
About a year ago, as she does, she calls me and says, have you heard that the 2028 Olympics are going to be adding women's flag football? And I said, well, yes, actually I did. She goes, I think that's what I want to do. And I just laughed hysterically. I said, oh, of course you do. Now remember, this is a girl that never paid attention to sports. She was all about the other side. And she unveiled to me this great plan that she had and why she would wanted to be passionate about it. Anyway, my daughter is now a professional football player for the WNFC. There are, I believe, 18 teams in the league. She is also now a very well-spoken and outspoken influencer for women in sports. So she is traveling and she is promoting the sport and she's playing the sport, and she has 550,000 followers on TikTok and so many followers on Instagram, and you can watch her and you can see her passion has just lit other people on fire. And it's one of those things I absolutely love. She is the epitome in don't be afraid to try something new, because she had never, when she went to tryouts, she said the way that she learned, she was very athletic. She had been, doing high rocks and a lot of athletic things, but she got in line and watched what the other women do and then did that. And
Okay.
she wasn't afraid to try.
Well, like I said, I love that. So I've been following Megan now on Instagram. I'm old. I'm a zennial. I'm not a TikTok person. I only have TikTok because I have a 13-year-old daughter. So I felt like I needed to get TikTok when she got TikTok. But I'm having a ball watching her. And I was telling Brenda earlier, even for example, one of my friends, her daughter and husband started the women's wrestling program for our local high school here up in Powell, the Olentangy Liberty High wrestling program. And their daughter, Malaya, she went to state as a freshman. And I need to call Mandy and say, Malaya needs to start following Megan on Instagram because she is beautiful, entertaining, and so inspirational. And so, FYI, to anybody out there, if you want an inspirational Instagram follow, Megan Steer, right? Megan Steer. I
That's
think that's
correct. And
Megan
I
Steer.
have to correct you, though. When you said you're old, you're not allowed to say you're old, because
Well,
I don't know what that makes me then. So I'm not taking it.
I'm a little bit old. I'm a little bit old in a sense of I don't like technology a whole lot, and I'm not on the TikTok bandwagon yet. We're still on Instagram. So,
Gotcha.
yeah, yeah. Well, Brenda, oh my gosh, I wish we could talk for several more hours. Let's honestly do this again. I think we would have so much more to talk about. So, but I do want to wrap up for time's sake. And I will just say this last question. This is the podcast. We can't do this alone. So, Brenda, what I'm going to go back to again, someone being in someone like my shoes, seeking out a good mentor. What is your best piece of advice for somebody, any age, looking to either find a mentor or continue a relationship with a great mentor? What is your best piece of advice?
Find someone you trust. Find someone that you're not afraid to be vulnerable with and share your deepest, darkest fears and secrets because
Okay.
that's really important. And respect their time, respect their wisdom, and then make your own decisions. You don't have to always do what they tell you to do. You need to listen to it, think about it. It's kind of like your parents, right? Hopefully you hear what they tell you, you listen to it, and then make your own decision from it.
I love that. I love that. Love that. Love that. Again, another piece of great advice, Brenda. So, okay, everybody. Well, that wraps up today's episode. Again, this is We Can't Do This Alone. Today, we had Brenda Steer Anstein, our mentor extraordinaire. Again, going back to this was really personal for me. She was one of my most important mentors. And again, she's an ally as well as a board member, a leader in the community, business owner. Thank you so, so much for the wonderful advice that you have given us. Again, this was a little bit out of the box of the normal philanthropy episode, but in philanthropy, we can't do this alone. We cannot, none of us in any profession, quite frankly, can do our jobs without a great mentor. So she was the perfect person to come on the show to share that. And I can't thank you enough.
Thanks for
So
having me, Erin. This has been
we're so,
so fun. Like I said, I could talk
yes,
all day with you. And
absolutely.
congratulations to you for
Well,
not
thank
only the
you.
show, but for your career and what you're doing and trying to help and mentor other people. Good
Thank
job.
you. I learned from good ones. All right, everybody. Well, thanks so much for being here, and we will see you in the next episode. See ya.